All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Infotech's webinar, Navigating E-Bidding with Fresno County. We're a couple minutes past the start time, and we have a lot of great content to share with you. So let's go ahead and get started. But first, a little housekeeping. So throughout today's webinar, you will be on mute, but we'd love for you to participate. So there's a Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen that we encourage you to use to ask questions that you might have throughout the webinar. And we'll address as many of those questions as we can at the end of today's presentation. Now, don't worry, if we don't get to your question, everyone will receive a follow-up email with answers to all of the questions that were asked. Finally, we understand that we are all using Zoom with varying internet connections, which may bring some challenges. So you may experience internet connection issues, but know that a recording of this webinar will be available next week. So now for some introductions. So my name is Michael Helm. I'm an account manager for Infotech, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. With me also, we have Aaron Hagenson and Jenica Gettert from the Fresno County Department of Public Works, and they'll be sharing their story of their transition to e-bidding with us today. Aaron, would you mind giving yourself a quick introduction?
Hi, Erin Hagenson, Fresno County Public Works and Planning. I've been managing the bidding processes for about the past 15 years with Fresno County for public works construction projects.
Thank you, Aaron. And now for Jenica, would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Jenica Gettert, and I've been a staff analyst with the county for 2 years. I joined just before the pandemic hit.
Great. Thank you, Jenica. We look forward to hearing from you both in a few minutes about your journey to e-bidding. So to start things off, we'll take a look at where Fresno County began, what their processes were, and the challenges that these processes presented. And then we'll cover the county's search for a solution to these issues and some of the priorities that they had in mind when exploring various systems. And then finally, we'll cover some of the results that they saw after implementing e-bidding and how it improved their bidding program. And then we'll close things off with the Q&A session. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So to start off, I thought it would be helpful to paint a picture for our viewers of what construction bidding was like at Fresno County before you made the transition to e-bidding. So Aaron, could you give us sort of a brief overview of your bidding process, starting with how you got bid documents, addenda, and any other pertinent information to your potential bidders while the solicitations were active?
Yes. So what we would do is we would post plans and specs online for bidders to print out themselves if they wanted. And we would mail them a hard copy of a bid book just to make sure that they had the exact correct bid documents to bid off of. And then we would, when anytime there was, addendums issued during the project, we'd have to email them to the individual bidders and make sure they got them on time. So that was basically the process. And then we would
Okay. So basically, manually compiling those lists of plan holders and individually emailing each one. Okay. So fast forward to bid day, usually a pretty busy day for teams like yours. Tell us a little bit about how bidders got their bids to you for submission and then your bid opening and review process.
Well, so we're located in a 21-story building downtown, and there is no free parking around. So it was always a big, I think, hassle for bidders to come to us. They had to find parking and then go through security, go up an elevator. So they would usually, try to arrive early, and we'd have to find a space for them to sit in our office. If we ran out of space, they'd be sitting in the stairwells or the hallway. And they'd be on the phone, writing in their bids at the last minute. Then we'd have the responsibility not to go around and warn them, what time it was and how much longer they had to get their bid in. So it was very somewhat disruptive to the workplace and very sort of exciting. And then we'd also be running down to our mailroom to make sure any bids that were FedExed came in and that we got them open on time. So it was a very stressful day.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And what about sort of reviewing the bids after opening? What was that process like?
So then we'd have a bid, live bid opening and just, obviously letter openers going through bids. finding the right pages. It could take, up to like 30 minutes to open a few bids. And then everyone would be anxious to make sure those are the right numbers. So we take them back to our office and have at least 2 people at a time, entering them into a spreadsheet. And then, of course, when you run into math errors, which of course happen because people were, just writing them in before the phone, minutes before the bid. So it would take hours, or usually we try to get within 24 hours, we would get the bid results, but it would rarely be the same day that we'd have it done because there would, be so much manual labor involved.
Sure. And just thinking about that process from start to finish, it sounds like there were a lot of manual steps that your staff had to dedicate hours of work to accomplish, and also a bit of risk involved that's inherent to that manual nature of it all. So let's talk about those challenges and on a deeper level, how they impacted your department. Nowadays, agencies are doing everything that they can to shorten that length of time between bid advertisement and contract award. What would you say were some of the biggest bottlenecks of your process?
Well, just, the first one is just handling a lot of paper, pulling apart staples, and then reading handwriting, and then deciding there's different interpretations of a math error and which one it was. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it would, would change who the low bidder was. It would often change the order of the bids and occasionally change who the low bidder was. So that changes everything when managers and everybody they're calling, who's the low bidder? And then you're like, well, I think it's this person. Then you have to say, no, actually the low bid is this much higher than we thought it was. And that can really change all the decision making, change whether we can award the project. Another thing is it would take time to enter every contractor license number, and we have to check their Department of Industrial Relations registration number. There's a labor compliance portion in California. That's another step. So those all would take time to do, and all pretty much be done manually. And then if a bidder made a mistake on their bid, we did need to let them know what, and then they would have, but we don't tell them, but they have the opportunity to apply for bid relief if they made a clerical error. So occasionally that would happen. And that's another sort of complicated process because you have to take something to the board, granting them bid relief, awarding to the next bidder. Lots back and forth between bidders. Right. And then scanning bids because other bidders want to see other people's bids. And so we would have to make sure everything was scanned and email it to, and distribute to all the bidders so they can look through it. So.
Wow. Yeah. All those employee hours across all of those steps add up, and ultimately it equals a longer time to contract and added costs to the agency. And having to manually perform all of these tasks also introduces certain issues and elements of risk in your bidding efforts. So some of the main issues or risk factors that we hear about are, bidders not submitting on time, receiving bids with errors or omitted requirements that lead to costly disqualifications, and the amount of competition on projects. And although some of these may happen infrequently, even one occurrence can cost thousands or millions depending on the project size. So starting with late bids, can you speak to some of the examples that you've seen?
Well, sometimes people literally couldn't find parking. Or just got stuck in security or the elevator and missed the bid. Even they're sitting there trying to enter their bid, but they don't get the information on time and they don't make it over to the counter on time. So things like that, or we always have to make sure that there's our clock. We have a clock that we had to put in the window to make sure, a satellite clock, so it would get the right time, and then link that up to the bidder's time to make sure we're all on the same page. And one time I helped a local agency with a bid, and they didn't have a satellite clock, and their clock turned out to be fast, and they ended up having to reject one of the bids. So it's just that's a really minor thing. I thought we had, but not just what time it is can be an issue. What are we on the same time? So that was a very upset bidder who didn't get to turn their bid on, even though it was actually on time.
I bet. Yeah. Okay, so how about bids with errors and omitted requirements? Any examples that you can share of that?
Well, once we had an issue that was just silly, but it was a real issue because the law says, public contract code says bids have to be sealed. Well, the bidder had, turned, in a rush, written it, folded the envelope and handed it to our secretary, but it wasn't sealed. And so we couldn't accept the bid. We had to take an item to the board, and the next bid was it turned out that was the low bid, and the next bid was quite a bit higher. We had to, it took a longer time to get it to the board, and we had to take it to the board and we had to reject it. And we ended up delaying the project a whole year because the other bid was just so much higher. And, one of the board members was like, well, do you have a sign telling people to tape their bids? And so from that point on, we had to have a sign up that said, remember to tape your bids and have tape ready. And it seems like silly, but we didn't ever want to risk having that happen again because it was so embarrassing. Even though we didn't do anything wrong, it felt like it reflected poorly on us. So
right, yeah. And then you talked a little bit about that bid relief process earlier, and it sounds like there's a lot of time involved in that and cost as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So if anybody makes a request for bid relief, it has to go to our attorneys, our in-house counsel. Or if anybody has an issue with the bid where we think it needs to be rejected, again, it goes to our attorneys, and that they always have to include sort of a legal analysis. If there's bid protests, it goes back and forth with the bidder's attorney, various attorneys. Now, electronic bidding doesn't eliminate bid protests, but it definitely narrows down some of the reasons you might have, it eliminates some of the reasons that you might have bid protests. You're not going to have them for a not taped bid anymore. You're not going to have them because the handwriting was unclear, and you're not going to have them usually because they forgot a document, because all that's like covered in the electronic bid. So people are very, very much less likely to make any of those really, really basic clerical mistakes anymore.
Right. Great points. And so to continue, I think any agency would agree that more competition is better on bids, right? And so what would you say competition was like when you were bidding on paper?
Well, since we started electronic bidding, we've gotten bids from a lot more out of town, bigger companies, and increased competition. So Fresno was in the middle of the state. And so we have lots of local contractors that do our jobs, but some of the bigger things, we've had trouble attracting, enough bids or enough bidders from different areas of the state. But I was told, somebody contacted me, one of the bidders, and they said, oh yeah, we never bid on your projects before because we didn't have time to come to drive to Fresno. But now that you're doing electronic bids, we're bidding on your projects. So anyway, more competition usually gets a lower price. And so we've been very, very happy over the past couple of years of how our bids have come in.
Okay. And then I think we also talked at one point about how you had a particular bidder that they knew they were the only bidder.
Well, no, that's not only one time. So when we were turning bids in person, they hand them to the secretary. They're in a basket. The bid runners can hang around and they know how many other bid runners are there. So if they don't see anybody else there, they can jack up the price if they see only one, versus if they see 7 other bidders there versus 1 other bidder or no other bidders. Yeah, we've had that issue where they change the price because why not? Now with electronic bidding, they have no idea how many people have submitted bids. So they can't do that.
Right. Yep. And it certainly sounds like your team had its fair share of obstacles that came with every project that you would bid out. And that eventually it just got to the point where, you could no longer ignore it. And obviously you were looking for a tool to solve all of these problems for you. But I'm curious, what were some of the other must-haves that were on your list that you were looking for when you began the search?
Well, we really there were a few things that we were looking for. One thing was we wanted the contractors to not have to have special hardware or software. And so we noticed that BidExpress had is web-based. So then anybody could use it, which was important. But also it's flexible. I really appreciated that when I was setting up the bids, that we could set up the solicitation to match our bid book, and we didn't have to change our bid book to match the software. And so with some of the competitors that we looked at, we would have had to change how we our processes, but with BidExpress, then BidExpress was able to flex. So then we just made it match what we were doing already. It also was able to accommodate a hybrid process. We would like to move to electronic only eventually, but during the transition, we needed the paper option. And so because we could accommodate that hybrid process where we make the paper match the electronic, then that was something that was important. Another thing that we were looking for is something that didn't have to make our contractors pay. So we sponsor our bids with BidExpress. And so then our vendors are on a level playing field. They don't have to pay to get into bid. And then I think I touched on equipment, but also for the software, they didn't have to make any special downloads. They could just use a web browser. And where we saw this in action was after we implemented e-bidding, then I was actually at a pre-bid meeting on site, and one of the contractors busted out their cellular connected iPad and was showing the other contractors how they were accessing BidExpress right there on the site. So that was an added bonus after we implemented it.
Wow. Yeah, all great points to make. Flexibility, simplicity, and convenience for contractors are all things to definitely look out for when you're looking into electronic bidding. So you conducted your search, you found BidExpress, and as with any process change, I'm sure there was a little bit of hesitancy, but ultimately, you decided to implement it. So what were some of the results that your team saw once you were up and running with e-bidding?
So, we seemed to get more bids. We never obviously had any of the sort of issues I described before of bids not being sealed or bids not making it up from the mailroom. We didn't have to, we were able to do it with only not having a full staff in the office, which is great. And then we were able to actually have people working on the bid opening at different locations. So some at home, some at the office. And then we didn't have to spend very much time, before the bid summary was in. And I almost feel like we set ourselves up to be too good because we've been giving bid summaries often for projects, within an hour or less to our director. And, the other day we had a little bit bigger one. It took a little bit more time, and, he's calling me on the hour, like, where is it? And I'm like, okay, it's almost, I always wish we had not delivered other things so quickly, because it set a new bar for how quickly we can have the bid results. So, I need to slow it down a little bit. So the other thing is, we're getting, this is an example of what our bid summary looks like. We're taking the data from BidExpress. If we get any paper bids, which we don't always, but sometimes we get some, because we still allow that in order to not. We still allowed it, and but we're gonna stop accepting paper bids soon. So then we take the information from BidExpress, and this is our we put it right into our format that we've always used. So, and then we haven't rejected any bids due to math errors since this was implemented. And we, like I mentioned earlier, we've been getting bids and awarding projects to bidders from farther away. We just had a landfill project that attracted a bidder that's never bid on any of our landfill projects before. So, which was a nationwide company. And then definitely it's minimized the cost, like the legal costs of going over like the bid relief request. I mean, I haven't had any bid relief requests from electronic bidding. And then we can take all the data right out of Bid Express and put it into our system. It's not like locked there forever. So we have freedom. We can retain all of our information. Another thing is that like you can print out a bid immediately after, and if another bidder wants to see it, it's like takes you a couple minutes or a couple seconds to give it to them. We used to have to go pull everything apart and scan it.
Well, clearly it sounds like it was a home run success for your team. What about your bidders? How well did they receive this change?
I haven't had any complaints. We have had a lot of positive feedback. I've had bidders like thank me for using this software because Caltrans uses another product that's very similar. And they said, oh, this is so easy because we bid on Caltrans road projects. So I'm glad you picked this one because we didn't have to learn anything new to do this system. And then again, I like the out of town bidders like it. And I did get one complaint, and that the bidder that she missed rushing down here, the adrenaline rush of rushing to the building, doing the whole thing. She missed that tension in her life. Now, so that was the only complaint I've actually got. And then, and then the bidders like that we're still doing the two, well, not many bidders, but I think a couple old school people like that we're still doing paper, but we did a survey and pretty much everybody will be on board when we stop accepting paper bids. So we've already laid the groundwork for that.
And to speak to how many we have, like last year we had 72% of our bidders were electronic. So this vast majority are voting with their feet by using Bid Express.
Okay, great. Sounds like electronic submission definitely has been the preference for your bidders as well. And it's good to see that they're enjoying this new process too. So now that we're at the tail end of the webinar, I just wanted to take a moment to allow you, Aaron and Jenica, to leave our viewers with some final thoughts about e-bidding. Any thoughts you want to share here?
In general, I guess in general, I wish we'd done this several years ago. We explored doing it. We were taking our time. We surveyed, and the pandemic made us just bite the bullet and do it without dragging our feet. So I wish we'd done a long time ago. That's first, because we've gotten more bids, better bids. It saved a lot of time. It was quick to implement. I don't know if I thought it would just be something that took months or years to implement it, but we were able to do it in like 2 weeks. So wow. I don't know. Yeah, I had thought, this is for the future. Let's push it off. Shouldn't have pushed it off. And I didn't know how happy the bidders would be. They hadn't complained that we didn't have it, but then they were sure happy when we did it. So, yeah. And then we've already started doing some of our RFPs and things with this. So we're actually changing some other processes with Bid Express that we hadn't even considered doing before.
Great. Okay. And so what would you say to those agencies out there who are sort of on the fence like you were about whether they should make the switch to from paper to e-bidding?
Well, one of the things I appreciate about it is that you don't have to jump all the way all at once. We managed with a hybrid, but a lot of contractors are expecting that they would just upload scanned documents, but it goes further than that. We have the fields that they fill out to prevent those errors, which is great. And so then you don't have to do the complete jump all at once. And then things like we made our paper match. After we had been using it for a while, we started realizing that we could make tweaks to our paper process that would make it easier to make, because so many more are using BidExpress to submit electronic bids, then we actually went ahead and made those changes to our paper process much later, so that things like the headings make more sense in both places, and those subtle tweaks. So we could really take our time with making sure that everything matched, and we could do it incrementally, and we didn't have to do it just, okay, now understand the digital way of communication. It was like, no, we can make it match. We can gradually move over to a more streamlined process. And another thing that's we've used is that we've continued to use our website alongside BidExpress. So BidExpress collects the bids, but we can, because we use our website to house all our data, we just link to our website and continue to house our data the way we had been, but use BidExpress for that. And I know some agencies might upload it all to BidExpress, and that's fine too. But you don't have to, okay, now house it all in BidExpress. You can still download it all, but we opted to have it working in partnership with our website, and it accommodates us that way.
My thing was, when other agencies, some do paper and some don't, it can actually affect us. So, because we had a neighboring county that had a very similar project to ours. It was a bridge, and bidders let us know, hey, you guys are both bidding these projects same day, same time. So I contacted the other agency and said, hey, if we change our bid opening to this day, you're going to leave yours. And they agreed. So we did ours one day, 24 hours later, we changed ours. And the other agency still did paper bids. So they did their bid opening, and they had an apparent low bidder at the time. And the second low bidder, the next day, really sharpened their pencils. They were really disappointed they didn't get the project. So they sharpened their pencils, and they were the low bidder on our project 24 hours later. Well, right after they found that out, the other agency, who had, taken them a whole day or so to get through their paper bids, said, hey, by the way, you're actually the low bidder on our project too, because the parent low bidder screwed up. So the contractor called me like, oh my gosh, we got both projects. And they were a little overwhelmed at the moment. I guess it benefited us because they sharpened their pencils so much, and they were able to deliver both projects, but we were all nervous for a minute. Like, are they going to be able to handle this? Because they weren't expecting to get those two same time, same kind of projects.
Right.
Oh, and one other thought, for going from awareness to like thinking about doing it. When we actually said, yes, we're going to do it, then BidExpress walked alongside us, and we actually gave them our bid paperwork, and they put together a sample, and we walked through it together. They've provided us support when we've had questions. But then another feature that I've really taken advantage of is that they have a demo account where you can try things out. So whenever we're trying something out, that we want to do a new process, then I just pop over into the demo, try it out, sign in as if I was a contractor, and see what it looks like from their perspective, and make sure that when we try something new, that it's going to work, and I can check that.
All great points. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. All right, so now let's address some of the questions that have been coming in. So we'll take as many questions as we have time for today, and then we'll follow up with everyone after the webinar with a complete list of questions and answers via email as part of our follow-up. So I'll start taking some of the questions in the Q&A here. We've got quite a few. Let's see here. So what was the biggest challenge for Fresno County when transitioning from paper to electronic?
Do you want to take it, Jenica?
Okay. I would say I'm going to say two, because one of them was just making everything match. It took us a while, and every once in a while there was something that would slip through, like this field was marked, both fields were marked required, but on the paper they could choose one or the other. And so it took us a little time to get that all straightened out. So we've had to be very meticulous about making that match, but that's a problem with having a hybrid system. And then we also, at the very beginning, when we transitioned from paper to electronic, we had to get the communication with the contractors was a bit of a challenge. I remember Erin fielded a lot of calls with questions, and then some of them she would pass off to me, and some of them she would like, the two of us were answering questions a lot. And sometimes we could send them to BidExpress and their customer support, but mostly it was just getting that documentation, getting people into the right place, assuring them, yes, this is the bid book. And so those two things, I think, were just managing the hybrid and communicating with contractors.
Okay. Sorry, did you want to add something, Erin?
Oh, electronic bid bonds, which were really exciting.
Yes.
We didn't know they existed. And but there was just a little bit of into just getting things clear with the bonding companies of how to do that. So getting our bidders on board with that. And that was where BidExpress customer service was very helpful.
Great. And so to sort of add on to the point about reporting and things like, or excuse me, the contractors and getting them ready for this transition. We have a question here that says, what did you do to introduce contractors to e-bidding? Sort of what did you do to get them ready for that process change?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. At first, we provided like lots of information on our website and in the instructions to bidders, the notice to bidders, and we just let them know. And then now that, once the transition has occurred and we're introducing new contractors to the process all the time, because they may be, existing contractors came along board when we transitioned, but now it's like, okay, I've never bid on your projects before. How do we do this electronic bidding? And for them, we do a combination of when we have a pre-bid meeting that's on Zoom, then we'll show them slides, show them how it works. What does it look like? We provide information on our website, and then we direct them to customer support for BidExpress and for the surety companies. And then sometimes we do info sessions on this is what it's like to bid, for Fresno County. These are the things that we need, and these are the things, this is optional, and things like that. And then we'll show them slides of what it looks like, which I'll pull from the demo site. Again, I'll pull what it looks like from the contractor side, and then I'll just show them what our actual bids or our RFPs look like.
Yeah. So depending on the type of project, we'll host information sessions if there's a lot of new contractors or questions. Mm-hmm. Depending on the contractors that bid on, I think, road projects are very well, or bridge projects, because they work with Caltrans. They already know how to do the stuff. But smaller, if we have a really small project, smaller contractors, they'll need a little bit more help. So we're just cognizant of who the plan holders are and what kind of help they need. But it's, of course, lessened every time, because more and more people just know how to do it.
Right. And then to add to that, just so our viewers know, Infotech is happy to work with any agencies onboarding for BidExpress to sort of help get those sessions out, the webinars, to help contractors get familiar with the agency's new processes, what their forms will look like in BidExpress and electronic format, things like that as well. All right, we have another question here. Is the bid results report made with BidExpress?
No, well, yes. What we do when we get, so if there's a paper bid, then we'll go into, there's a spot in BidExpress where you can enter a manual bid, and we'll go ahead and enter what we see into the field so that the data is all, instead of putting it into a spreadsheet, we'll put it right into BidExpress so it's all in one spot. And then we just hit export on the data, and you can export to Excel. And then we take that Excel data and copy it into our template of the report that we've always used. So we just hit sort, and then
so there is a report in BidExpress.
Yes.
That you can just use.
Yes.
But we didn't want to change anything about the way our traditional report looked, so we just export the data and put it in our format. I don't know. I guess it's just old habit, because everybody, for as long as I can remember, is used to looking at it that way. But
Right.
yeah, you can just push a button and run the report in BidExpress. But it wouldn't have, our information, So
Sure. Yeah.
our
No, that's a
logo on
great,
it.
that's a
Mhm.
great comment to add that, there are standard reports in BidExpress that you can use, but if you want to continue to use your own custom formats, you can export that data out and then format it however you'd like. Great points. Here's another question. So Aaron mentioned that Fresno has a hybrid model with paper and electronic, but would stop accepting paper bids soon. Would you mind outlining if this was just a predetermined time, like 3 to 6 months, or is there a milestone that the county would reach to no longer allow paper bids?
Basically, before we would stop accepting paper bids, for policy reasons, we'll need to take it to our board of supervisors to make sure they're okay with it. Because contractors would complain to them. So, basically, there's not a milestone, just letting time pass to see if anything comes up, or really letting, like we said, 72% of people are submitting electronic. I mean, if that was, and that's gotten higher over time. So I suppose that just hoping that we would able to take it and say, 90%, but 72 is pretty good right now. So as far as just changing the policy, it's just a matter of us taking an item to the board and doing it. It's already been drafted. It's just like, so that longer answer than you wanted, but and some people, I wouldn't necessarily say that you should do the hybrid process, just that you can. It's probably more efficient to just bite the bullet and switch to electronic, because there's obviously always a risk in having two parallel bidding processes. Luckily, we haven't had any issues, but you could. So anyway, that's it. But we decided to do a soft approach. So longer answer than you wanted, but ultimately, like we don't want to sustain the two systems.
That was a perfect answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next question. So can BidExpress handle more than just bids? What about RFPs? Yes, so there is functionality within BidExpress to allow agencies to evaluate, different portions of a proposal, the different criteria that you would evaluate a proposer for. And Aaron, as I understand it, you all have had some experience with that recently in terms of RFPs in BidExpress.
Yeah, we just recently did a on-call consultant, and we did on-call consultant RFQ. And how many responses did we get, Jenica?
Oh, it was over 60.
Wow.
So we use BidExpress for them to upload all of their documents for the RFQ, instead of getting them through email. And so they're like all organized and in one place. It doesn't use the bidding functions of, the low bidder thing, because they're just uploading documents. But I think it's really, really helped our organization and letting everybody submit at the same time.
I really appreciated that they entered their references in separate fields. So it was, a half a day's job to set up the reference check emails that went out to, 4 references per RFQ, instead of like that would have been untenable to send out all those reference requests. And because they had entered the information into an exportable field in Excel, we just sent out a big mail merge and got a lot of responses back from those references. So we were able to give our committees a lot more than what we could have.
Great. Awesome. All right. Next question. We have a couple minutes left for Q&A, so I'll cover a couple more. Let's see here. And actually, this might be our last one. So can BidExpress integrate with other systems? I'll take that one. So yes, BidExpress does have an API, which stands for Application Programming Interface. Basically, what that does is it opens up the data within BidExpress, both solicitation and bid and proposal data, to be sent to and from any third-party systems that you would need to integrate with at your agency. So we do have the ability for you to integrate those systems together. All right, and let's see here. I think we have time for one more. So you may have already covered this, but are you requiring digital IDs? I don't believe your team is doing digital IDs, right?
No, we're not. And that was one thing we told the bidders, don't worry about the digital ID because we know it takes time to set up. The reason was, I mean, we took paper bids and I mean, we don't verify signatures exactly. So we thought, let's not make the bar too high for everybody. But I guess that digital IDs are the future and it's probably something we should do eventually. I guess when we implement it, we weren't prepared to, we wanted to make sure that everyone was able to bid electronically. And we knew that is a little bit of a time consuming process. So thanks for bringing that up because it's probably something we need to talk about, but we'll want to do a lot of outreach and training before we require that.
Right. And so just so our viewers know, that Bid Express does offer two methods for contractors to sign their bids: electronic signatures, which is what Fresno County uses, where the contractor just types their name in a signature field. The other method is digital ID signatures, which is where Infotech acts as the certificate authority, and we actually verify the identity of the contractor, and then we give them a what's called a digital signing certificate that they use to basically sign the bid and give deeper encryption to their bid data that then gets sent to the agency. So end-to-end encryption, and then there's that extra background identity check for the contractor so that you know who is actually submitting your bids. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. Before we close out, I'd like to mention our podcast, Let's Be Civil, which features in-depth discussions on civil infrastructure topics. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And then I'd also like to thank both of our panelists today, Aaron and Jenica, for participating. We really appreciate your time and willingness to share your expertise. And thanks to all of our viewers for joining us. If you'd like to find out if e-bidding would be a good fit for your agency, please navigate to infotechinc.com/bidexpress, or feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address is there on the screen for you if you have any questions. Lastly, after this webinar ends, you will be redirected to a brief survey that will help us improve future webinars. So we'd really appreciate your feedback there. But otherwise, everyone have a great afternoon.